Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the webinar on cyber hygiene. My name is Dolores Serfin, and I work for Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation with the Food and Bioprocessing branch. I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we start, here are a few housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, please click on the question mark symbol at the top right of your screen. I will make sure our presenters address all of the questions at the end of the presentation. You will also see a react symbol at the bottom left of your screen. This allows you to show your reactions to anything being said during the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. The link will be sent to you in an email after the live webinar. Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation and Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium are pleased to be bringing this webinar to you. There have been many stories in the news lately of agriculture and food businesses facing cyber attacks. Are you wondering if you have the information and practices to protect your business and that your employees understand them? In this webinar, you will learn more on how to protect your business. Toplician and Dominic Vogel from TLC Solutions and Sean Graham from ACERA Insurance will present information on cyber hygiene for the food and beverage sector. These industry speakers will focus on three areas of protection: diagnosis and awareness, investing in tools, teams and processes, and how to invest in cyber insurance. Toplician is the Director and Revenue Operations at TLC Solutions Incorporated. Aaron is passionate about building a better future through sustainable technology adoption while celebrating innovation and creativity. He has spent the last 7 years working with manufacturing and food processing leaders in support of adopting breakthrough technologies that drive safety, optimization, security, and profitability. As the leader of revenue operations for TLC Solutions, which is comprised of the client solutions enablement, client care and marketing developments, Aaron is dedicated to creating a collaborative ecosystem amongst partners, peers, and industry experts with the goal of sharing cybersecurity and technology adoption best practices across the food and beverage sector. Our next speaker is Dominic Vogel. Dominic is the president of Vogel Leadership Coaching. He is a well-respected cybersecurity thought leader, appearing on media news outlets across the world. As a veteran cybersecurity expert and thought leader, he holds a proven track record across a multitude of industries: financial services, logistics, transportation, healthcare, government, telecommunications, and critical infrastructure. Dominic is a firm believer in delivering sustainable security that supports and protects business goals. Having worked within large and globally diverse organizations, he has extensive security experience that has been forged over the past 2 decades as an information security professional. Dominic is also the president at Vogel Coaching and Leadership Services, a Vancouver-based leadership advisory company specializing in cybersecurity. Our final speaker today is Sean Graham. Sean is a seasoned professional specializing in the insurance and cybersecurity sectors, with a particular focus on commercial insurance and cyber risk assessment. Currently a director and partner at ACERA Insurance, Sean has developed a deep understanding of commercial insurance dynamics and the emerging cyber threats faced by various industries. With extensive experience in sectors such as biomed, nonprofits, and manufacturing, Sean is adept at crafting tailored insurance solutions. Over the last 10 years, Sean has focused on cyber risk management, developing innovative tools that identify vulnerabilities in organizations and offer appropriate cyber insurance protection. By staying updated on the latest underwriting trends and cybersecurity standards, Sean ensures that clients meet the ever-evolving cyber insurance requirements. His expertise spans various domains, including helping food and beverage manufacturers address cyber exposure such as operational disruption, ransomware, and supply chain vulnerabilities. Sean is well versed in outlining the multifaceted costs associated with cyber breaches, including accounting, legal, and regulatory fees, particularly with regards to privacy compliance under Canadian law. With a strong focus on empowering highly motivated professional advisor teams, Sean combines industry knowledge with a strategic approach to market growth, sales, and risk mitigation, helping businesses thrive in today's complex digital landscape. I will now hand it over to Aaron to start us off today. So Aaron, go for it.
Thank you so much, Dolores, and welcome everybody who are joining the conversation today. Um, Thank you so much for the introductions. Just a little tidbit more about TLC Solutions. We are a business technology consultant specializing in delivering professional IT services, software and automation solutions, cybersecurity products and best practices. And we work with small manufacturers, food and beverage processing companies, and truly small to medium sized businesses across North America. We have offices in British Columbia, Alberta, and our US headquarters is in Irvine, California. As a company, we are passionate about delivering technology. Yes, you heard it right, technology. It's a word we trademark that represents having a joyful experience with your technology. From a business perspective, that experience also aims to create profitability and prosperity through the investment of technology and best practices. So today, the key outcomes that we're focused on that everybody will be taking from today's presentation are we want everyone to learn why cybersecurity is an investment and not just a hard cost. Understand where you are today as it pertains to your cybersecurity posture and cyber hygiene. Leave with practical tools, best practices, and recommendations that you can implement again today. Learn why investing in your people is the best cybersecurity practice you can do. And lastly, our friend Sean will help us understand how cyber insurance works, what it means to have coverage versus not, and really why businesses need it in today's world. So, why invest in cybersecurity? Before we look at the why, let's quickly look at some facts and statistics. And I'm going to be asking Sean's help on this one as we go through the next few slides, as we've got some numbers that apply to the food processing industry and manufacturing as a whole. We often hear, my business is too small, I'm not going to be on some cyber criminal's radar. Not true. As these stats show, small and medium businesses are now the biggest target for cyber attacks. As you can see here, 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses, and that number continues to climb. And I know Dom and I have chatted about that statistic going up and up month over month. Now, these two other numbers, they're two to remember as they're going to come back in the presentation. But just under 2 million is the average cost to remedy a ransomware hit for Canadian companies, and nearly 1/3 of ransomware payments are over $250,000. Sean, I'm going to ask you to help us on these next few slides.
No problem at all. What have we got here? Oh, yes, that's right. So according to IBM X-Force Threat Intelligence 2024, manufacturing is the #1 sector where cyber criminals are focusing their energy. On the global scale, if you hit the button again there, Aaron, 15 to 12, sorry, accounting 15%, 12% respective of all cyber incidents. You might think that's a low number, but that in Canada number translates to over 13,000 businesses that are being attempted at being breached on a regular basis in the manufacturing sector, which means everybody. It's a non-discriminant. These are not people in their mom's basements in their boxer shorts trying to hack in. These are AI bots that are sophisticated, that are active, and they are looking at your business today. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the number of cyber incidents reported in Canada. These are the numbers that are reported to the government. I wonder how many are not reported to the government. The stats are about 4 times the number that are reported to the government are actually occurring. These 4,500. Every 39 seconds, there is a cyber attack launched. 78% of reported claims in 2022 originated with phishing attacks, which goes back to what Aaron said, the most important investment is your people. And then 42 days is the average time a threat actor sits inside your system with you being completely unaware that they're in your system. That is the average in Canada, which is down from about 75 3 years ago. So there's some stats for you.
Sean.
Oh, we got this one too. Yay. Occurrences in the past 5 years. So this is an aggregate. Don't forget. So what I want to comment on this screen is that where you see 21 and 20 and 17 funds threats, transfer of funds, data breach, and ransomware. 5 years ago, those were the 4%, the 2%, and the 1%. They are growing exponentially on an annualized basis, and they are by far the top three. And again, when you see funds, when you see data breach, and you see ransomware, most of the time, the access point is back to Aaron's most important investment: people. So there you have it.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. And kind of piggybacking on what you mentioned, the vast majority of attacks are not reported.
What?
Well, companies, as you know, Sean, want to do everything they can to protect their credibility and generally don't want the public to know they've been attacked, right? So the result is we, as you mentioned, only hear about a few of those companies being attacked. So I know some of the people in the audience may be saying, okay, hey, we read the news, we see the stats, get to the why. Well, why should we invest? So at this part, I'm going to hand it over to my friend Dom to talk about why it's an investment in cybersecurity.
Thank you, Aaron. And yeah, so back to that big question, why? And any motivation should be brought back to a why factor. So, like Aaron was saying there, small and mid-sized businesses are the low-hanging fruit. If you could just, yeah, there you go. Love that pick, by the way, Aaron. We've seen this shift in the market. 10 plus years ago, if you were a small mid-sized business and you said, I'm not going to invest in cybersecurity, you were okay. But now we've seen that, that change, and that every organization is a target. And I always jokingly say that unless you're selling tacos on the back of a Volvo and all cash deals, your company is at risk of getting hit by a cyber attack, right? Every company is a digital company. And what's at stake? Trust, reputation. Those are hard-earned currencies to win with your customers, with your clients. Do you really want that thrown out the window? And the other thing too is being able to say, what is it that they're actually seeking? And they're seeking data, and recognizing in this day and age that every piece of data actually has a level of monetary value to it. No longer is it just we don't have sensitive data, or we don't have personal information, right? So cyber criminals aren't going to bother us. The data that your organization has, even if it's important to no one else, it's important to you, right? As I mentioned, we're all data-driven organizations today, and data is what fuels the systems, and what fuels the business processes, is what fuels your organization to be able to fulfill its mission. And cyber criminals know that. And if you were to lose access to that data, or lose access to those critical systems, they know that you would be willing to pay to be able to regain access to that data. So we can no longer hold that crutch of, our data is not really important to anyone. It is. It's important to you. And the last piece here is that more and more, when we're seeing this, I'll say this interdependent, interconnected supply chain, more and more, the complexity of supply chain risks demonstrate that small organizations often present the opportunity to be a stepping stone access to larger organizations. And that's why we're seeing larger organizations really clamping down on vendor risk management, supply chain risk management. So if you're a small business, is trying to sell to larger organizations, you need to be prepared to be able to demonstrate that, hey, we take security seriously.
Excellent.
Oh, there was one more. And the other piece here is around relationships. Back to the earlier point around trust and reputation. We're seeing this, what happened with CrowdStrike a few weeks ago, right? All it takes for valuable relationships to disappear, valuable business partnerships to disappear, is for these types of catastrophic type of security events. So why not invest more seriously in this to be able to preserve the things that are allowing your business to grow and to succeed?
Absolutely. And Dom, let's also look at, these are all those I would call negative motivators, but let's look at some of the positive reasons as to why.
Yeah, and there are positive ones, Aaron, and exactly like you said there, trying to change his mindset around, security is just a cost center. No, let's flip it on its head. In this day and age, if you do security right, it equals opportunity to be able to be a true source of competitive advantage. back to my earlier point around vendor risk management and supply chain risk management. Let's say there's small company A and small company B, and you're both vying to sell to large company C. Because the large companies are really clamping down on vendor risk management, if you are able to demonstrate quicker and more effectively that you're doing security better than your competitors, large company C is going to go with you. You now have a source of competitive advantage, and that in recognizing that and being able to tie the security drivers to the value drivers and the success drivers in your organization. Now you're making sure that the security dollars that you invest are actually going to materialize in driving value and driving success for your organization. And again, when we're talking about investing in security, I don't mean opening up the checkbook for $5 million. Just taking easy and pragmatic steps. It doesn't need to be expensive. Take those, focus on the limited, whatever limited resources that you have, whether that be people, whether that be investment dollars. How do we not be an easy target, right? And there's we'll go through that. What are the steps that you can take in order to not be an easy target? So the other thing too is that, and I love that line at the end here, at the end of the day, I think that's springboarding to the future piece here that we're going to talk about, is that this isn't a one size fits all. This isn't just an end of the road. This is a journey, right? So taking that small percentage that you would do of your total revenue, you can protect a large swatch, if not all of your revenue. So I feel like I just stole your slide there, and I'm just so damn excited.
No. It's a good segue. It's a good segue, and exactly right. What we're hoping to convey today is by investing in a small percentage of your total revenue, a calculated cost, a flatter cost, you could protect 100% of your revenue through adding these layers of cybersecurity. So all starts, as Dolores mentioned earlier, with a diagnosis. It starts with awareness. And just like your personal hygiene, knowing your cyber hygiene is important. But unlike your personal hygiene, it's not easy to diagnose and assess your cyber hygiene. Similar to diagnosing an internal health issue. We like to use that as a reference that will continue through the next slide here. That's why it's important really to trust the experts. And like I mentioned, just like a doctor you trust to make a diagnosis on a health issue, you want to trust the experts when it comes to cybersecurity. Whether you work with an internal IT team or an external IT team like a TLC Solutions, having a third party do an analysis of your cyber hygiene through an external assessment is super important to consider. Again, sort of like a doctor recommending you see a specialist or getting another opinion, having that third party cybersecurity team allows for a truly non-biased assessment of your technology environment. We're all human. We take pride in our work. IT professionals, like any other professional, may think there isn't a problem and could form a bias within your network security. Again, that's why we, even at TLC Solutions, work with our partner Dom to ensure we don't form a bias when regarding our clients' cybersecurity. So where to start? Dom, back over to you, my friend.
Yeah. And I want to give kudos to service providers like TLC that aren't like the fox guarding the hen house, where it's like, just trust us, things are secure. Right? I appreciate service providers like TLC that say, you know what, we're able, so we don't take our word for it. There's other ways that you can understand where we are when it comes to security. So start off that journey in terms of where do you start. I'm a big believer in understanding maturity. And like I mentioned earlier, security is a journey, right? This isn't let's just upgrade to this and we can call it a day and we'll revisit it 5 years from now. That's not the case, right? Security is continually maturing. It needs to be interwoven into the DNA of an organization. Just like how any organization evolves and matures over time, same thing with security. So there's various frameworks that can be used, right-sized, customized, to be able to say, where are we right now as an organization with our security maturity journey, and where do we need to go over the next 6 months, year, 18 months, that type of thing. Again, engaging and trusted experts to be able to understand that and identify that. And the next one, penetration testing. It probably should be renamed, but it's been that name for so many years. It's really about security validation testing, right? How do we know that the security tools, systems, processes that we have in place, how do we know that they're operating as intended, right? So being able to, again, work with a trusted expert or a trusted organization to be able to identify really know those technical holes, those technical weaknesses to better understand, are things operating as intended, or do we need to take additional steps to close some, again, we talked about earlier, low-hanging fruit. And this is more so, like I said, from a technical lens perspective, what technical gaps are in place that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. And
Moving on.
I'll touch base on this one, on the
You take
business
this one?
continuity
Okay.
and disaster recovery plan. So having a BCDR plan with proper backup and recovery solutions really could mean the difference between life and death for your business. It's aimed to manage revenue loss by reducing as much downtime as possible in the event of an outage or, worse, a cyber incident. You may say, well, we have backups in place and we have a plan already, but my question always is how often are you checking your backups? Or even better, are you even testing your backups? Not testing your backups is basically the same as not having a backup solution. That's why you need to have a plan. I'll give you an example, a real example of a food processing business that unfortunately, and they were quite large, they had a ransomware attack here in BC and did not have their critical data properly stored in their backups, even though they had backups in place. This data was then encrypted. And again, because they didn't test, they didn't know it was gone. It was encrypted by nefarious actors, causing significant downtime and data loss. The remediation work, I think, took over 12 weeks, which created a significant cost, nearly crippling their business altogether. Had they been testing their backups regularly, this would have been spotted and probably would have had a much different story. I'm going to ask Dom to touch on one more important plan, and then we'll kind of get on to the next stage here.
I'll be real quick, but I also want to add one thing about the business continuity plan, and you're spot on around the testing, right? Plans are only as good as the last time they were tested.
Right.
But the thing that I think is super important with business continuity as well is that going through that exercise really helps us set what's called the cyber risk appetite for an organization. So what is that? And by risk appetite, I mean, how long are you willing to not have access to that critical data, to those critical systems? Is it measured in hours? Is it measured in days, right? And then being able to understand from your risk appetite, what's your tolerance then? So what's sort of the level of ups and downs in terms of or deviation from that risk appetite. Understanding what your risk appetite is, or what I call your crying uncle point. When someone holds your arm back as far as they can until you scream uncle. Knowing that is super important because that helps to dictate your level of spend and your level of investment. Because if you're measuring that in terms of minutes, how you approach security, how you approach your backups, very different than if we're talking about, we're good with, a day or two of downtime, right? And that dovetails very much into the cyber incident response plan. Knowing that is absolutely critical because that's going to help dictate how you approach that plan. And the most important piece around the cyber incident response plan, in my opinion, is that it's not about the technical response. More often than not, it's not the technical response that leads to data breaches or incidents being these massive catastrophic events. It's the lack of planning at the ownership, at the executive level, where they're just viewing this as something that the IT team deals with, right? That's the most important thing of these last two things around these plans, is that it brings everyone to the table and recognizing that ultimately how this plays out, whether it's a little speed bump or a massive sinkhole, depends on how as an organization we're approaching our response, not just the technical response.
Absolutely. That's a very, very, very good point of putting there. It's not just the technical response. Okay, so in this next part, now we're going to talk about investing in tools, processes, and your teams. And there are many different cybersecurity tools to choose from. So here we're going to explore why you should invest in the newest form of malware protection, known as a managed detection response. Similarly, I'm going to share processes that you can capture today and look to implement within your organization if they're not already being implemented. We'll give some of those examples, and as well, again, we're going to talk about investing in people. When we're choosing the appropriate malware and cybersecurity tools, at TLC, we like using an analogy, protecting your home. In this first scenario, you see there's no protection. It's actually an open door. In the second home, well, okay, now we have, a fence. The door has been finally shut and locked, and there's a warning. There's a guard dog but any would-be robber has the opportunity to infiltrate by simply subduing that dog. The third house here, now we are getting much more protection. As you can see, camera alert system has been installed, and the alert notifications when certain events are triggered based on time or motion. It's better at detecting threats, but again, this can send you and many alerts, and you may get what's called alert fatigue. If anyone has a Ring camera and a Ring bell, you probably know what I'm talking about there. Lastly, you've got an alarm system with multiple trigger points on all your doors and windows, sirens. It's being monitored by real police, as you can see the little blue shield there, and backed by, again, a team that's monitoring for this. So when it comes to cybersecurity, when we look at this example, one is symbolic of having nothing in place, or rather, even your infrastructure and methods haven't been updated in years. Two, it's like having an old or outdated antivirus. It's going to scan, detect, hopefully delete. This won't stop those phishing emails. Three represents what's known as an EDR solution. It's being monitored, but the question is by whom? And do they have the right tools and skills to deal with the threat? Again, think of that alert fatigue again. Lastly, four represents what we call a managed detection response system. There's proactive and trained humans monitoring, and it's clear that any threat actor is not low-hanging fruit, or this house is not low-hanging fruit, to any threat actor. Moreover, this level of protection includes your cloud platforms and mobile devices. At TLC, we have an MDR solution called OneLock, which it also protects, again, all mobile devices such as Android, iPhone, and your cloud software. So remembering the ROI, back to the investment piece. A top grade cybersecurity tool like OneLock will cost your business anywhere from $15 to $20 per user per month. So thinking of this from a perspective of a 100-person business, this will equate to about $18,000 to $24,000 per year. Once again, an investment of this can protect 100% of your revenue. And if you remember the example before, ransom payments can exceed over $250,000. Again, very important to consider this as an investment. This next slide here, I'm going to talk about some procedures and tips that your IT team should be enacting already on a regular basis to, again, improve your cyber hygiene. So the first, operating systems updates and patching. This also applies to your equipment. So I want to make a note here. Often older equipment is tied to an older operating system, which no longer supported and poses serious security risks. If that equipment is tied to your network, right, as we mentioned earlier, then yes, that older filling machine can be a pathway for a breach. Similar to that older filling machine, updating and replacing your infrastructure and hardware, such as network equipment and servers, is critical for the same reasons as stated above, but also from a business continuity aspect. Think of it this way. If your 10-year-old server crashes and is out of warranty, well, you're now down that server takes usually weeks to get spun up again, and you have to purchase that new server anyway. Key takeaway, I hope the audience can take from this. I encourage you to work with your IT teams, or if you're not, to reach out to us to create a roadmap and a budget plan for all your hardware, which will outline when to replace that critical infrastructure, as well as even your personal computers. The next piece here is password management. If you don't have a password manager for your employees, get one today. Most IT teams and providers should have this in place for you already. And it's important to exercise proper password hygiene and best practices, as this is usually a way hackers can do what's called brute force to get in. You would be shocked at how many people are still using password one as their password. Next is permission controls and user groups. So these should be established, as it will prevent external and even internal teams from accessing key and sensitive data. And you can also think of this with your suppliers as well. make sure you understand their cybersecurity policies and how that information is being exchanged and whether or not it's being protected. And this is, of course, just to name a few. If you're curious to learn about more procedures, definitely reach out to us after the webinar here today, and we'll be more than happy to talk about ways to continue to protect your business. But I have to ask the age-old question: have you heard of a thing called MFA, aka multi-factor authentication? Dom, if you can spend a minute or two here just to talk about the importance of multi-factor authentication. And I know he's got his radar going off too, as this is usually a very, very big thing for insurance.
Yeah, and multi-factor authentication, the way I'll put it as simply as possible, the old username and password model it's outdated and it's broken. I mean, it was constructed back in the 60s when computers were the size of houses, and here we are all these years later still relying on it. What multi-factor authentication goes on is that we're going to assume that your username and password combination is compromised. And what MFA or multi-factor authentication means is that we're going beyond, so i.e. multi, just the password. So that can be generally the most secure one is leveraging what's called an authenticator app. So that could be like MS Authenticator app, Google Authenticator app. There's different apps that can allow you to be able to provide another level of authentication, i.e. being able to prove that the person logging in is indeed you. So again, there are other forms, SMS and what have you, but generally through an authenticator app is among the more secure methods. That means it's something that you know, i.e. the password, and then it's something that you have, i.e. your smartphone, to be able to demonstrate that, like you said, you are who you claim that you are. So that's probably the best MFA explanation I can give at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Thanks, Tom. And Sean will tell you this is also a requirement for cyber insurance policies. Correct, Sean?
That's correct. There's no access to coverage without it.
Bingo. And I know we'll talk a bit more about that in a few slides here. So now the biggest and most important thing that you can do as a business and invest in when it comes to cybersecurity best practices, it's invest in your people. And here's why. 90%, and this is a US statistic. I know Sean had shared a Canadian statistic, but 90% of all cyber attacks begin with phishing. Can't stress this enough. Phishing, for anyone who's unaware, is when a nefarious actor uses the fraudulent practice of sending emails or messages claiming to be someone from your company or a reputable company that you do business with. They generally are seeking out personal information, such as passwords or requesting payment transfers to their new bank account. We've seen this time and time again. Companies lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions, due to an employee believing that a vendor had switched their payment details. This happens typically due to a lack of security protocols or policies, and of course, training. When it comes to training, at TLC Solutions, we work with a partner known as InfoSec Institute to establish yearly training programs for our clients. These programs also offer modules and courses throughout the year to help show your employees what the newest and unfortunately latest attacks are looking like. And it actually does what we call a fake phishing email campaign, which will entice employees to click on links in an email. Once reported, managers can then meet with all the team members to show them just how they did. Over the course of the training, the goal is to see that number go from X% open links to 0%. In my experience, I'm always quite shocked to see how many executives are actually opening these links. So these training programs are universal across all team members, and they're actually the lowest cost when it comes to cybersecurity tools and best practices. Okay, so looking at that ROI once again. So cybersecurity training, as I mentioned, it costs plus or minus about $5 per person per month. Using that example we used earlier of a 100-person business, this can equate to just over $6,000 per year. Once again, an investment of $6,000 per year has the ability to protect 100% of your revenue. And I want to make a note here. There is no silver bullet. There's no perfect way to have all of your systems secured. This is to mitigate or manage the risk as best as possible. And people are, unfortunately, the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity risk. So I really want to highlight as this being one of the most important that you can do and invest in today for your team. Now, lastly, before we start talking about insurance, this is another one of those slides I wanted to share with everybody. And it's a simple process that everyone can screenshot, but I recognize that these will be sent out after the recording, that you can share with your employees, share with your team. Because again, email is the most common way for cyber criminals to target businesses with those phishing scams. So as a process, it's always best first to verify that sender's email. The name may be correct, but the email could look different. And what's worse, that domain that they're using could very well look like the real domain. I'll give an example with TLC. That L in our name could also be a capital I. So another way that you can protect here that's not listed is, as a business, buying those domains that can cover those character changes is another great way to prevent spoofing. Off the bat, examine the email contents. Is that email generically addressed? Does that spelling and grammar sound like the person it's coming from? Other things always to watch out for is the urgency. They claim to have urgency. We need this now. Again, asking for private information or banking details, gift cards, list goes on. And do not reply. Call that person if they're posing to be a person from a company you deal business with. I always say call first and then use the email to that contact information that you have. I need to stress the call part too, because it's always better to talk to a human in these scenarios. You can also inspect the links by hovering your mouse over the links and just ensure that is that content actually related to what the email is saying. Next process, once you've determined this email is from a bad actor, filter and block it. Every time that you are doing that, you're helping your IT administrator out and you're improving your overall company's cyber hygiene. Lastly, send it to the trash. Always, always, always delete those emails. And for this last part of our presentation, we want to talk about in the event that your business does get breached. As I mentioned, it's not 100%. There's no foolproof plan, but this is why it's important to invest in cyber insurance. So Sean, I'm going to pass this part of the presentation over to you to help us close it out.
Sounds great. Thanks, Aaron. All right, everybody. Hold on to your seats. Good news and bad news here. First off, as I said in the beginning, as has been highlighted, the importance of investing in people. Canada is on the naughty list on a global scale when it comes to phishing. We are the third worst in the world for clicking on those links. And do you want to know why? It's because we're too damn nice. We're trusting. And because we are trusting and nice, we are the targets of what is called social engineering, which is there is a desire innate in most Canadians to help, to be a good employee, to be responsive, to be active. And that positive motivation has been hijacked and turned into a powerful tool for criminals. I'm not telling you to be not trusting. I'm telling you to be maybe a little bit slower and to take your time a little bit more. And we're going to go into some details here. There's a myth out there that a cyber breach is an IT issue. It is not. That is the first layer of the issue. It is a revenue issue. It is a accounting issue. It is a legal issue. It is an HR issue. It goes down the line of every aspect of your business. As was said earlier by Dom, unless you're selling tacos at a back out of a Volvo for pure cash, you have an IT issue. You have a cyber issue. You are dependent on your internal systems. And so what we do on our side is we make sure that in the event that all of your best practices, all of the education, all of the partnering with great firms like TLC, all of that is backed up with robust resilience-based insurance. There's a myth out there that insurance, they never pay. Well, I can tell you today that so far this year, cyber claims have paid out over 110% of the premiums paid into them in Canada so far this year. And they figure that's going to end up being about 125 to 130. So the whole idea, insurers are just out there making money. On a global scale, they're still making money, yes. But here in Canada, they are losing money on cyber insurance. But they're still selling it because it is critical to the needs of the clients. So we've talked a little bit about sort of how broad these exposures can be. We've all heard about the breaches that have been on the work, like manufacturing breach that was down in the States recently for Clorox bleach. Ended up being they lost, I think, 14% of their market share as a result. So you can do the math. And that's not a trust issue. That's simply their product wasn't available and other people had time to find other products to replace it. That's a cyber issue. And that's where business interruption comes in. There is no coverage for business interruption as a result of a cyber event except through your cyber insurance policy. Business interruption, if your building burns down, you need it because it's going to keep you whole during that period of time where you're rebuilding. The screen's backwards. It's so weird. But when it comes to cyber insurance, the business interruption is one of the key elements. If it takes you 5 weeks to get back up and running, what did you lose from operational costs? What extra expenses did you have to incur as a result? Oh, wow, look at me doing this. I made balloons. That was awesome. Okay, so the next thing, I'll move on to the next slide here, is I know we're running out of time and I don't want to take it all up. Business can no longer afford to view cyber liability insurance as a nice to have. It is a necessity. What I say to clients today is, listen, this is the only insurance in the world you can buy while your house is on fire. The odds are your system has some sort of malware in it that you're not aware of. The numbers simply, the frequency of breaches simply tells the story. We'll carry on past that. What do we do? Cyber insurance is really the only tool you have to get back up and running and to offset the costs associated with the loss. People say it's too expensive, I don't want to invest in it. And what I'll say is, if you don't invest in both robust security pre-event and cyber insurance post-event, you are going to be paying for it. You're going to be paying for it much more in the event of a breach. I can tell you horror story after horror story, and I won't go into great details, but I got one manufacturing, there's a small manufacturer, they had a breach, it shut down their internal systems, their CAD docs were taken away from the design, and basically they've been unable to produce products for 4.5 months. They didn't buy cyber insurance, and they did not have robust pre-event supports like TLC provides. This company's not going to make it.
Right.
It's a sad story, and it's just a fact.
And we see it time and time again, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so as a brokerage, ACERA Insurance, we have a position that if you're one of our customers and you choose not to buy cyber insurance, we actually make you sign a declination that says you understand the risk you are taking, because it is right at the heart of what will make you resilient in the event of a loss. And we want you to be resilient. We want to provide you only what you need, but you need it. And I don't want to get into too many more details. There's a cyber checklist that we can talk about that we'll go back to. But if you haven't spoken with your broker or they have not spoken it clearly enough to you, ask them one question, or go to your IT support, go to your TLC or whoever they may be, and ask them, do we need cyber insurance? If they are worth their weight, they will answer the question without missing a beat. Yes, you need cyber insurance, but you also need the pre-support structures in place to make sure that you have a robust system to fend off the majority of events. But in the event of a loss like cyber, like a breach or a hack or a funds transfer or whatever it might be, you need to look at this and you need to take it real serious.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sean. And lastly, just to leave the audience again with another checklist to screenshot or to take when the link is shared. Dom, if you could spend 2 minutes to go through this so that we can leave some time for questions here. I really appreciate this as this you had put together, and I think it's brilliant.
You bet, Aaron, and I'll be even shorter. So we make sure we leave lots of room for questions here. But again, this is a tangible takeaway for the participants today. You know, everyone attending, bring this back to your organization. Right, these are questions to ask at the executive level, the board level, your IT service provider, or your internal IT team. It's really about making sure that we're having this a more fulsome cybersecurity discussion and really bring this from like Aaron was mentioning earlier, from a risk management lens and discipline. This isn't just something that is in the domain of IT. This is something that is ultimately the responsibility of many departments within an organization, right? So again, they range in I'll say in degree in terms. Some of them are more so related to the executive or boards. Some of them are more technical and related to the IT team. Some of them are related to questions around cyber insurance. So like I said, tangible takeaway. Give it a shot. If you're not sure, reach out to organizations and awesome people like Aaron at TLC.
Thank you, Dom, and thank you everybody for listening and attending. That includes the presentation portion of today's webinar. I'm going to cancel my sharing. There we go. Perfect. And now we can open it up for questions.
All right. So first question for you gentlemen is, should I consider a cyber hygiene action plan? I think you've kind of dealt with this, no matter how small my business.
I think all three of us are going to say absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. From Sean's perspective, it's required for insurance. In most of the applications, it is one of those boxes that you can check yes or no to, in terms of getting that policy.
I'll just make a comment there that I said that the loss ratios in Canada are as bad as they are. Insurers they're not doing this because they're nice. They're doing this because they feel an obligation to provide a service to their clients, but also they do want to make money. They are selfish. So they require a robust cyber hygiene today. They will not give away the policy for free, and they don't want claims. So they want to know that you're doing the right things in advance.
All right, perfect. So just a reminder to everybody on the webinar today, go to the question mark on your top right-hand side of the screen and ask your questions, because these guys are waiting to answer you. So my next question for you guys is, how often should antivirus software be updated?
I'm going to say that's almost the wrong question. That would have been a great question circa 2005. Maybe I'll put it that way. Aaron was talking about sort of the evolution in terms of where we are, right? And it's really focusing on what's called endpoint protection and, taking that a step further, managed detection and response, right? Really, this is a focus around resilience. How do you make your organization as resilient as possible? By having modern technology, right, from a preventive perspective, you need to have early detection response capabilities. And should something be detected, you have the right plans to be able to respond effectively to that, right? So I hope I don't sound like a politician not directly answering that question, and shifting it elsewhere, but it's less important about antivirus and more so around resilience. There's a word that Sean's mentioned multiple times. How resilient is the organization? I think that's only as resilient when you're looking at it from like prevention, detection, and response. It's way more complicated than just antivirus.
All right, thank you. So next question. I have older technology connected to my production line. Can that be a security risk?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is one of those areas in the slides earlier in terms of updating operating systems and patching. All our devices now are connected through the Internet of Things. So if that device is plugged into your network, it's a risk. Just like a computer from a staff member, it is super important to make sure that you have security measures placed on that, whether it's detection methodologies or making sure it's updated, making sure that it's up to date with the latest security patches. So great question. It is definitely still a point of entry. And we've seen it unfortunately in food processing and manufacturing examples where that is a sought after target from a lot of criminals, because they know, hey, that old filling machine is, it could be a very easy target for us to breach through.
Just make a quick comment there. We had one recently where a printing press, after all the employees had left the building, was remotely turned on through an IoT connection point that had been breached. That they had been sitting dormant. This was just to mess with them, to show that they had the ability to harm them. They turned it on overnight to run dry, and it burnt out the machine, and it's a $380,000 loss.
Wow. All
Which, by
right.
the way, would not be covered under your property policy. That's only covered under your cyber policy.
All right. Good to know. So next question is addressed to you, Sean. So if one of your supply chain people gets attacked and your business is shut down and you lose over 12 days, will cyber insurance cover you?
Yeah, that is part of the design. Cyber insurance is designed to have business. That is a business interruption loss. It depends on how deep the hack went. If one of your supply chain went down, and you were affected as a result, there is a coverage under your policy under the business interruption side that would cover you after those 12 days. The odds of your client being shut down, and it's called contingent business interruption, and not all cyber policies have them built in automatically. You need to be asking your provider, your broker particularly, do we have coverage for our vendors who make us work? Is that covered? If we lose that access, we lose money. Are we covered? And that is available. Yes. It's not terribly expensive either. Ironically, it's just that you have to ask for it. It's not given, and your advisor needs to be telling you what is available to you.
All right. Good to know. How often should your user passwords be changed?
Back to, again, there was old advice circa 2005 and what's modern advice. So old advice was, oh, we need to change it every 30 days, 90 days, what have you. That's still quite pervasive in our various infrastructures, but it's no longer rooted in good practice, because that notion of trying to rotate the passwords led to people creating less secure passwords or reusing passwords across multiple platforms. So it actually weakened the whole system. So good approach to it now is having enforced password requirements, so a level of length, at least 14 or 16 characters, more important than complexity. Having, and Aaron mentioned this, having password management in place, right, to allow people to even maybe auto create very secure passwords without having to remember them. That is good practice. And the third is having some level of email monitoring or password monitoring, on the dark web, to be able to identify, have my credentials been compromised, right? If so, then at that point you would change it. And the last thing is multi-factor authentication, right? If you're able to do all four of those things, then that is good practice around, I'll say, access management or identity access management.
All right, perfect. So at this point, we have no more questions. So I will throw it out there one more time to everybody on the webinar. If you want to ask a question, please type it in on the question box at the top. I'll give them just a couple minutes here to see if someone sends in another one.
Sounds good.
All right, you
And
guys you were so good with your knowledge you threw out at us.
come on. Well, we're all very passionate about this, because we understand working with small businesses and medium businesses on a day-to-day, the level of impact not having cyber hygiene can mean for the life of your business. I always throw this out there. If anybody has questions that come up, obviously as an afterthought, please share our information. We are happy to answer those questions offline as well, whether it's insurance and Sean can step in, or if it's on creating those plans where Dom and myself can step in, or just general questions about cybersecurity. We're here to always help.
All right, great. We got one more question for you guys.
Yay!
Can you describe some examples of training for cybersecurity that would be provided?
Yeah, Sean, or actually, Dom, why don't I pass that one to you? Because I mentioned the InfoSec phishing training.
Sure. And to me, when it comes to training, it's really about, again, making it as practical and pragmatic for your staff as possible and customized as possible. Again, do you want to hit them with over the head with them every single day? No, because they need to focus on their job. So there's various, I'll say, discussions right now, even in the security community, around how effective is awareness. Right now, sort of good practice is when people are on board into an organization, and at least once a year, there's some level of security training that people have to go through. Maybe there's a test, what have you. Its studies have shown that maybe that's not the most effective way. It's good from a compliance perspective. It meets, especially with security, with cybersecurity insurance. Sometimes there's an ask, are you training your staff? So from that level of perspective, it does provide value. But I'm a big believer in what I call a conscious security culture. How do you go about building a conscious security culture? And it's very much, I'll say, a multifaceted approach. So the bedrock of a lot of security awareness programs is that platform, right, where you can monitor, you can send out that annual training or once a quarter training, what have you. Again, customize it maybe for people who are in accounts payable. You'll have more specific things to them compared to someone who is maybe in a sales role, or maybe the executives have something that's more designed around spear phishing, right? So there's opportunities to make it less generic and more specific to people's roles. So I think that's important. And I think the other important piece too is being able to sprinkle some things in here and there. Studies have shown we're in an age of micro content, especially for younger generations. They're not going to sit around and once a year to go through a security awareness video for 45 minutes, right? They're more effective with those shorter bites, right? Hitting them maybe once a month with a funny 30-second video around security awareness. That may be more effective for them. So again, knowing your team, knowing your culture, knowing your people, there are different options and different mechanisms. But I think it all comes back down to, like I said, knowing your people and knowing how they learn.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to comment on what Dom said there. I couldn't agree more in regards to those little bites. Communication theory says we retain 2% of what we see, and you can go like today. You're going to remember 2% probably a week from now of what you heard today, which is bad news and good news because thankfully it's cumulative. So if you drop those little drops of risk management training on a continual basis, it becomes part of, you call it the culture, I call it the risk management mindset that sets you up for success, as opposed to that once a year do the compliance thing.
Right. Yeah. And to add to that too, the training that we typically provide and work with our clients, it's a year-long program where it's self-guided, where the team members are, you can curate the modules. To Sean's point, they're short 2 to 3 minute video like modules that has some questionnaires and quizzes at the end. And most importantly, has that phishing testing, right? Is sending out those emails and testing your staff. And it's not just hey, let's do it for a month. It's a continuous training program throughout the year. And we have seen that be probably the most effective defense with our clients. And like I mentioned earlier, we all need it. I mean, executives, people on the front lines. It's not just for team members. It's all of us. And the biggest targets, and I'm sure Dom and Sean will agree, are C-suite, our executives, our owners. This is where that spear phishing example comes into. Sean's waving his hand.
I fell for it. I have to do my remedial training because I actually clicked on a link. I know this shit. Sorry, my French. I know this, and I clicked on a link because it came from what I thought was my HR team telling me about a new hire, and I was pleased about, and I clicked on it. So annoying.
Right, and great point. It happens to all of us, even in the security world. It can happen to partners, it can happen to friends. It's important to have that top of mind. So that's why we believe in the academy programs that we offer.
All right, thank you. Next question for you guys. How much on average would a very small business pay for cyber insurance a month?
By very small, I'm gonna go with if you're talking like a $5 million revenue company, which would be a very small company, like $1 million revenue company, your premiums could start at $120 a month. That would probably be where they would start. If you're at 10 million, you're probably looking closer to the about $200 a month. And then once you get above 10 million, it starts to go up. If you're a $25 million company, you could be expecting to pay around $1,000 a month. And that's for about $2 million of coverage, which would be the bottom level I would recommend for any organization in Canada. We see obviously higher limits, but insurers don't throw those limits around because they do know that claims happen very, very frequently.
And to
Oh,
touch on that note too, I know Sean, we talked about this. We buy flood insurance or we'll buy fire insurance. The likelihood of those events happening, though they can happen, are very, very low. The likelihood of a cyber incident or breach to your business is much higher, much, much higher. Yet we fail to think of that because we're so used to the traditional disasters.
Well, a lot of people buy their insurance for the flood and the fire and things like that because they have loans and the banks require it. And so what we're starting to see, which will be coming, you'll see it more and more. If you're taking out substantial loans as a business, they're asking you, do you have cyber insurance now?
Right.
It's coming. It's coming. The Royal Bank's already doing it. We're seeing it from the CIBC starting to doing it, depending on the loan size at this point. But that's going to become the standard. Everybody's waking up to the fact that this is not an optional coverage any longer. Like fire and flood are not optional. Cyber is just simply not going to be optional.
all right. So here's just a comment in regards to getting scammed. It was just, yes, right now there are those phone scams that get you to say yes, and AI captures your voice and then
Mm.
uses it for hacking your secure things like bank, etc. So just things to be aware of.
Don't
Yeah,
do the
and
voice thing with banks. Don't do it.
yeah, it's a good point. And actually another note on the AI voice piece. It was actually one of my colleagues mentioned this with his family. They actually have a safe word that they confirm. So if a weird call that sounds like dad is coming to one of the kids or to mom or vice versa, asking about money or I'm arrested and it sounds just like them, they ask for the safe word. So that's just the reality of where we're living in today.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right. So at this point, we have no more questions, gentlemen. So I would like to say thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and expertise with us. Definitely something to think about going forward for everybody, regardless if you even have a business, just for keeping your own banking stuff and that safe personally. So, to all of those on our webinar today, you will receive a short survey at the end here to help us determine what other webinars we should organize and present for you. And, maybe you'll have another topic that these guys can share some more info with us. So the survey will take no more than a couple of minutes to complete. And I would just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.